Before we dive in, I just want to note that this episode was so special to me to record, having been a part of the communal and educational experiences that Marie has designed and architected in the past. It was such an honor to have her on this episode. And in this episode, we cover such a wide variety of topics, from the high-level mindset and curiosity with which we must continue to approach community building, all the way down to some of the really practical experiments that Marie is conducting to figure out what the future of learning looks like online and especially in community. So I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I think you will too. Welcome to Dear Bri, an advice column for community conundrums, fiascos, and drama. This season of Dear Bri is sponsored by our friends over at Heartbeat. Heartbeat is an all-in-one community platform, and it's the one I chose to host my own community. Your members can finally have events, conversation, content, and even courses in one distraction-free, intimate, customized home. I chose Heartbeat for 3 reasons. First, Heartbeat is unparalleled in their events management features. Events are a core part of my community architecture, and their features make my life so much easier. Second is segmentation. It's super easy to break my community into smaller, more niche subgroups and create a more customized experience for that group in Heartbeat. And finally, their courses. Being able to host my educational materials and learning journey in a community-first platform makes my community that much more valuable and retention that much stickier. I'm an affiliate with Heartbeat, which means when you sign up through my link in the show notes, I get paid a small amount at no extra charge to you. Thank you for supporting my work in that way. And finally, I usually record this podcast from Hawaii Island, so a special thank you to the Kanaka Maoli people on whose land I currently reside. Our letter today comes from a community manager in the thick of a complete overhaul for the type of community they run. And it has to do with this tension between a cohort-based model and a membership model. And I knew when I read this letter exactly the person for this episode. Please welcome Marie Schacht. She is the CEO of Akimbo, a company founded in 2015 by Seth Godin. She has designed and run more than 100 plus community-centered workshops, courses, and trainings, both online and in person, ranging from a few hours to 200 plus days. Whew. I first met Marie when I went through the Alt MBA program, and I know people broadly consider Seth Godin to be like the marketing guy, but in my mind, he's the original community guy. And from my understanding, Marie, you've been by his side as a right-hand gal from the very early on. And back when everyone was just starting to create online courses, Seth, you and the team at Akimbo were really trailblazers in this education-centric community design, and specifically for the cohort-based model. So I'm so excited to have you on this episode, Marie, because Alt MBA was one of the most transformative experiences I've had online. And I know we've talked about the cohort-based model and some of our feelings around it. So Marie, thank you for joining us today.
So excited to be here. Thank you for having me, Bri, and looking forward to talking all things cohort-based and community and seeing where this discussion goes. And for our person who wrote the letter that we're going to dig into.
I know. I'm excited to dig into it. Marie, this is a podcast about community conundrums, fiascos, and drama. Do you have a story for us from your own experience that you're willing to share to open us?
The one that is coming up for me in this moment was back in, I think it was 2019. We had decided to run the Real Skills Conference. And this was going to be a virtual event for the Akimbo community, for people in Seth's community, for people who had taken Alt MBA. And we were so excited. And I think we had about 1,500 people registered to join us live. And it was going to be 3 hours long. I had organized about, I think it was 16 different coach pairs who were going to be hosts of the conference. And we were running 8 different simultaneous real skills rooms on Zoom. So it was this amazing operation that we had set up, and we were so proud of ourselves. And I was responsible for introducing the conference and welcoming everyone. And I have all the screens loaded and I've got it all dialed in and I'm ready to go. And I go to make the introduction and my computer could not handle it. My computer just said, nope, and completely shut down. So here I am at this pinnacle moment. We've planned this conference. We have, for that time period too, for 2018, this was like we were really pushing the edges of Zoom. And so for it to just crash, I was like devastated and had to just quickly Slack the team and say, hey, everybody, my computer has overheated, overloaded. Luckily, our team, per usual, is very flexible and adaptable. And someone else was able to make the introduction and welcome everyone. And I think that just speaks to this world that we're in online learning and trying to bring people together in community and test new formats, try new things, is sometimes you have complete meltdowns. And that was probably a really fun, big one for me where my computer just went blank and we had 1,000+ people live on Zoom and I couldn't be there.
I can feel that in my gut for you and on behalf of you and your team. That sounds like a terrible situation to be in. And I think it also speaks to this broader theme in the community world and industry where the people who are creating community online right now really are pushing the limits of a lot of the technology. And the technology isn't quite there, I would say, within the community industry where we are, social media was 10 years ago. So we don't have all the bells and whistles. Common to have tech issues, especially if you're pushing the edge of how a piece of technology was intended to be used. And that sounds like it came at the perfect time just before the pandemic hit and Zoom invested a lot more into their tool.
Yes. And I learned an important lesson that when you are in that space of pushing the edges and saying, hey, we're going to go for it, we aren't sure if it's going to work, and we have a lot of people who are going to show up and we care about making sure their experience is great, that it does work out. And it is exciting that in this world, you can have someone else in another location whose tech probably is working. And so to design with that in mind, it was just a really painful and rewarding learning opportunity in particular. But yeah, it was a fun one. We're like, okay, yeah, I'm not getting back in there for a little bit. I got a total reboot here.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I think there's something to be said too, when you know that you are pushing the edge of the technology that you're using, or maybe introducing a new technology. And this is a topic I talk a lot about because I work with all-in-one platforms, and it's a new transition for like your members who might be used to engaging with your learning process in an LMS or a course or something that's a little bit less dynamic. How important it is to like say that up front to your community, like we are trying this new thing, or we're pushing Zoom to the limit, or just acknowledging it up front and setting that expectation, I think invites your members to participate in the process and not just expect to be consumers in the process, which is our whole hope with like behavior modeling within the community space, is to frame it so that our members are participants, not just consumers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Are you ready for the letter I have prepared for you today?
Yeah.
Dear Bri, I work for an ed tech company with a community that's hosted on Better Mode. For years, we've run our programs as a cohort-based and time-bound series, meaning that members will join a program to go through a journey together. Our founder has decided to make a dramatic shift in pretty much the entire business model. They'd like to become subscription-based instead of time-released and session-based. I have a lot of worries about this. Over the years, I've become really adept at how to drive engagement for this cohort-based model. I feel like this shift has massive implications for my posting strategy, how I organize the community, and the greater journey that people go through in the community. As I think about all the implications of this, we also won't really have an alumni community anymore. I feel frustrated by this top-down decision, and I still deeply believe in the cohort-based types of experiences we started with. Am I crazy for resisting this change so much? Signed, Crumbling in Kansas. So to start with this letter, and I'm going to ask you, if any pieces resonate with you in a second, Marie, but I do want to take a moment and pause for our listeners to explain, just make sure we level set on definitions of a cohort-based model versus a membership model. So I define a cohort-based model as a group of people who are coming in at the same time to go along a specific journey together. It's usually like an educational journey that's planned out and guided. The membership model is much more free form, where people can join at any time. You might have longstanding content. You might have several micro journeys in mind for people when they join a membership, but it's an ongoing recurring revenue, which for when I work with my clients, the membership model is very attractive because of the recurring revenue, but it comes with its own set of challenges. So before I run my mouth, Marie, does anything in this letter resonate with you?
So much resonates in this letter with me. And I would say this is what I think about weekly, even now, is what models, what formats, how to organize journeys. And it's hard. There's no clear answer. It depends on your community, depends on your customers. So the first thing that's resonating is just, this is going to be a discussion and topic that is ongoing in this space in the EdTech online learning world. So I want to just say that this is a juicy, complex topic and something I think about every week in the work that I do as well. Also, what resonated with me is the worries, fears, and resistance. It makes sense to me. This is a big unknown that you're facing, and it requires a shift in both mindset and approach. Plus, it means having to let go of what you know and what you're confident of in terms of engagement strategies that you trust and if you've spent time developing. So I just want to remind the letter writer, our dear Crumbling community in Kansas, to give yourself grace and compassion. It's not easy to navigate. And we're talking about both a loss of security and control. So there's a double whammy here. While I think about this and I'm also constantly questioning what are the right formats, what's going to be most impactful, just reminding to give grace and compassion. So that was resonating with me as I was reading is, wow, yeah, this is tough. And it's a big change. And it means having to enter the unknown and to start by giving yourself grace and compassion. I think that's important. And then I also want to say, because I have to catch myself doing this, is that being mindful of our negativity bias as humans. And as you experience that resistance, pausing and making some space to intentionally ask yourself, what could be great about this shift? So as much as you may be running and thinking about, oh, this shift, what does it mean? I'm not going to also think about, oh, this is opportunity, possibility. What would I need to be able to enter into this new unknown space with excitement and joy? And to ask some of those questions, because it can be quite heavy just to be trying to figure out cohort, membership, subscription. It can turn into a dark place. So just being mindful of that. And yeah, the other thought that was coming up for me quite a bit as I was reading is just thinking about ways to do cohort-based and time-bound within subscription and membership models. That's a place that I'm experimenting quite a bit. And I think as people have learned about options and ways that they can engage online, there's a desire for both flexibility and structure. And so our work as the designers, community hosts, leaders, putting together strategy and things like that, I think we do have to really step into that creative space and be thinking about how can I take all of these things I know work really well and I've tested and proven, and how can I use those to start experimenting in these other ways to meet people where they are and what they're looking for too. So as much as I was resonating with the fear and the worries, there was also this part of me that was getting quite excited about possibilities and opportunities in making some of this shift and making some of these changes.
That's so good. And it reminded me too, I think there's like this undercurrent through this letter of the relationship with the CEO that I think should also be acknowledged. That seems, and we are given very little information in this letter, but my interpretation is that this was a very top-down approach. And so I think that could be another piece. I want to cover the community strategy, but especially within the dynamic of managing a community within a team where not every decision is going to be yours, or you might have a manager who doesn't necessarily always ask for your opinion before making these decisions. And so I think there's a whole other layer of how to navigate those internal dynamics that I would also love to get your thoughts on.
For sure.
Well, let's start with the community piece and the nature of a cohort-based model. You've worked a lot with that model. What are some of the strengths to the cohort-based model?
The strengths, in my perspective, of the cohort-based model are you have that really clear group of people coming together at a clear, very set starting point. So there's a gathering, there's streamlined communication. You're really able to cultivate a particular experience for a group of people. It also allows the learning in terms of I can see what someone else did at the very same point in this journey as I did. So there's a lot of peer-to-peer learning opportunity in a cohort-based model because everyone is working on similar things at the same point in time. So much learning can happen because I can see, oh, look, Bri just posted that. This is how Bri approached it. So you can see the people around you and learn from them. In a cohort-based model, I think is one of the most impactful things that I've seen with that. It's also, with the cohort-based model, I think easier to have orientation, get people set up in the space, help them find everything they need, and then begin and then be following a rhythm that is consistent and clear as well. So it sets the structure. You can really create that structure in a cohort-based model. I think that's really important. And then I've just seen the commitment levels that you get from people who agree to a particular start time and a particular workload and however many hours or whatever the engagement agreement is, you really do get a higher level of commitment in cohort-based courses, which then allows for accountability, both from whoever is running the program or community, and then also that peer-to-peer accountability, because if other people are posting around me, I'm going to feel more motivated to stay with it and keep up with the work. Whereas that is much harder to do when you're solo and trying to find your way alone. So yeah, those are some of the things I've seen really are impactful about cohort-based models.
Yeah. I love the psychological comfort that comes from knowing there's an end date to something and the time incentive that creates to work through the content in a reasonable amount of time, because you have to give people a reason, whether it's a membership model or a cohort-based model, you have to give people a reason to do the work today. And the cohort-based model, that prompt is naturally designed in the experience. In a membership, you can prompt people and give them a reason to do it today, but it takes a little bit more tweaking and a little bit more creativity. And you can't just let it slide. You have to show up with that intentional design. What do you think some of the benefits of the membership? So the CEO has said, we're completely shifting, we're moving into a membership model. What are some of the reasons you've seen people shift to that model?
Some of the reasons I've observed, operationally, it's easier. There's less intense demand. Setting up a cohort, launching, running it, offboarding, ending. There's a lot in the cycle, and the energy spend is quite different than when something is open and continuously running. So that's one. You can streamline operations. You can get more consistent on what are the daily inputs. You can really spread it out and make it a little bit less of these highs and lows, ups and downs. I think that's one big one. You mentioned it earlier when we were chatting of just the recurring revenue. It does make your projections, your financial planning, it gives you a much more consistent monthly number versus, hey, we're launching our cohort-based model and we're hoping we get 100 people and you have no idea because you don't know. So it makes it harder to project and predict, whereas the membership model, someone's in and they are continuing to pay monthly to be a part of it. So you do get a different recurring cash flow. I think customer retention is a big part of the membership-based model that is, I won't say easier, but you can create different relationships in a membership model. Whereas if someone's coming into a cohort-based program, they're a student, they took the course, and then they graduate because it has to end and some sort of transition needs to happen. And the transitions are hard. They are their whole own thing. And then you transition them to where? So to me, a membership model allows you to cultivate a relationship that is more ongoing, which if you're a brand or you're wanting to have customers that you keep for multiple years, there is a piece to the relationship that is harder to do when you're just having them come in for a course and the course ends and they leave. And then the whole question of alumni community and how do you keep people engaged in between courses. So the membership model to me just smooths out all of that and allows you to have a foundational base that looks a little bit different than someone coming in just for the cohort-based experience. Those are some initial thoughts. Pause.
So well articulated. I'm truly in the thick of this too for my own community and have been experimenting with different formats and really ran essentially 3 tests for the cohort-based model and doing more of an accelerator to help people start their community. And I've been tinkering and exploring and like really thinking through these concepts for my own business. And I think one additional layer to this that we often don't consider is your marketing engine also has implications on which type of community model might be better fit for you. So for businesses that have like a slow drip marketing, maybe they have like several different lead magnets and they have different people coming in at different times. A membership model might be more accessible for that marketing engine. For businesses that have like seasonal pushes, or maybe they do like collaborative partnership workshops that get like 100 new people on their email list at the same time. Like they have this more of an active lead generation funnel. That model I found works better with the cohort based because you really quickly and really clearly have an offer for those new leads right away. It's, oh, hey, you found us 2 weeks ago. In 2 weeks, our next cohort is starting. But you really have to have that journey lined up of, okay, we're going to get in front of new eyes through this event or this initiative. We're going to convert them to the cohort in at this time. And then once they're done, here's the next step for them. And the downside to that is it does require way more energy than simply allowing like a drip system and people to go through. So I think questions that this company should ask is our marketing engine set up to sustain a membership? Is it more geared towards cohort based? And what changes do we need to make and how we're getting in front of new eyeballs to make this membership sustainable for our brand?
Well said. And what kind of relationship do we have with our customers? And what kind of relationship are we wanting to cultivate with customers, existing and new? Because I agree that if you don't have the marketing system set up in a way that aligns with the product offerings and the learning experiences and the community experiences that you're offering, it creates all kinds of fun challenges and headaches for sure.
Absolutely. This podcast is sponsored by Ember Consulting, where I'm the founder and head community creator. At Ember, we help people who are familiar with running their business on content, coaching, or consulting become community powered. As you hear in this podcast, creating a community is really tough and managing it can be even harder. So don't do it alone. Whether you're looking to launch a new community or pivot your strategy, our one-on-one consulting helps you skip the learning curve and do it right the first time. And when you're ready to belong to a space just for community creators learning, testing, and growing their communities together, check out the Ember community. Now, back to the episode. What other advice would you have for Crumbling in Kansas? We've talked about what resonated in the letter, a little bit more of the cohort-based versus membership. What advice would you have for their position and what they have in front of them?
Something I have to coach myself on often is not getting into the either or mindset and thinking it's either cohort-based or it's membership or it's subscription or it's 4-hour live workshops. So I think that's important, is to pause if you notice you're getting into either or thinking, because it's really difficult to make any kind of decision and feel any sort of joy and possibility when it seems like it is that either or. So I think just continuing to come back to, okay, cohort-based is working really well for you all in these engagement ways. How can you understand more about the business needs and the marketing needs, and then use those same strategies, but in new formats or testing new formats? So I think the other question I would have back to the CEO and to the company is just, hey, okay, I understand we're making this shift. What are we going to do to test it before we go all in on changing everything, wanting there to be a very strategic and intentional transition, and really thinking about, what can I experiment with? What can I test? Because it is a really big leap to make, just from here's what we're doing now and we're going to shift completely to this. And from having tested a lot of different formats in our work with Alt MBA and Akimbo, when you have a group of people who are used to a certain way of engaging with your community, your brand, your learning experiences, when you start introducing big shifts, there is also a customer education piece that goes with it. So being aware that if you're an employee on the team feeling this, imagine what your customers are going to feel if you announce this big of a change to them as well. So just thinking through it, like, this is a transition as much as it is changing a change. Like, so be thinking about, what's the transition here and how do we start testing and exploring what this might look like for us?
You said one of my favorite words, testing, experimenting. What could a good test look like for Crumbling in Kansas to begin testing a membership without fully taking the huge step?
I don't know, because again, as you mentioned, we just have the limited information that's in the letter. We also won't really have an alumni community anymore. So I would say if there is an existing alumni community, then you're likely already running a more membership-based experience, because an alumni community is, hey, we're staying connected. Like, there's a shared reason we're all connected, but there's some kind of prompting and engagement you're probably doing to that group. So you're already doing some membership-based things. And it sounds like the shift would be, okay, now we're going to try to actually charge for this or put a fee on this kind of format. So the test would be, okay, looking at your existing alumni community, what's working there? What have you implemented, figured out in that? Because that could be your starting point for how you might shift these other cohort-based things into more of a membership model. So just highlighting that it sounds like if there is an alumni community, you're already doing this a little bit. And so building off that versus feeling like I'm starting from scratch, there's this total change happening. Because when we were running alumni communities, they were more of a membership model, and they were free because we were using fees from the existing courses to fund those. But yeah, I think that's important to highlight. It sounds like you're already doing some of this.
That's such a good call out. And I don't know if you interpreted the letter this way, but I almost interpreted it like, oh, well, now our alumni community is going to go away. And I love the reframe that, like, actually, that's your test. And actually, I think that's a really good question for the CEO too, because there's a little tiny tone in this letter to me that's just like bright, shiny object. Oh, we've been doing cohort-based, but bright, shiny object. Let's just switch it to membership. And so my question would be like, well, is whatever you're doing with membership, i.e. this alumni community, is that working even quote unquote better than what you're doing in the cohort-based model, and asking some of those questions before making the big switch, which it sounds might be too little too late in this scenario. But I love reframing that alumni experience as the test for what a membership could do for this business. And leveraging the alumni community to actually make the shift and like incorporating the members into the transition rather than treating it like, okay, this is going away now. We're creating something entirely new.
Love that. Yeah, it could emerge out of the existing alumni community. That could be the starting point for the shift into membership.
Yeah, exactly. What other questions do you have for the higher ups in this situation, or even the community manager?
For the higher ups, I think I would be really curious to understand their vision. Just really get curious and ask about the vision. What does this look like in 3 years? What do you see my role as? I've been doing this, but what do you see needing to shift about that? So getting curious and staying open, and hopefully, I also don't know from the letter, hopefully the CEO is the kind of leader that is open to making space for someone who is running an important part of their community and sitting down and making that space. So encouraging curiosity and going and asking, hey, can you tell me more about your vision? And also go and own your worries and concerns and be transparent about those and have a discussion. Because I think so often, myself included, I can hear a decision and then I start running a story in my mind of what that means, what it's going to look like, and then take myself to a place that maybe isn't as helpful as if I were just to say, ooh, hey, that's making me feel unsure and concerned and worried. Can we talk it out? Can we have a discussion? So know that is leadership. Going and having a discussion and owning your feelings and what you're not feeling totally sure about is a huge leadership skill. And if it were someone on my team and I was that CEO making that decision, I would want them to come have that conversation with me. So trust in the relationship and have the conversation if you haven't already, where you express, you could even read this letter or you could even play this episode to them and just say, hey, I wanted to share this. I'm trying to really figure out and how to navigate this because it's a common experience in change that these kinds of things come up. So I would encourage that.
Add one comment to that. I love that point. I think it's worth pausing on even longer because when you were saying that, it brought up for me a couple of scenarios in the past with my managers where I felt like articulating my worries and concerns was communicating that I wasn't on the team or I wasn't going to do, I was afraid to bring those to the team because I thought that they might think, well, Bri's not going to go all in on this. She's not going to do her best to make this a huge success because she's experiencing this resistance. And a therapist gave me a tool a long time ago that was the fill in the blanks. I feel blank because blank. I need blank. And you could even add in like an intention there. And I think the final piece of that, my intention is I want to make this community the best it can possibly be. To do that, I need reassurance about the model, or I need extra support in figuring out how I'm going to shift our engagement strategy or whatever that thing is. So I'll say it one more time because I love this tool, both in my personal relationships, but also like in any relationship and especially professional. I feel blank because blank. I need blank. Fabulous relational tool.
It's a great tool. I would also be asking the higher ups, the CEO, how does this align with our values and mission? To hear how they would articulate and communicate that, because it's likely they have been thinking about this change for a while and making the decision and sharing that news. And so getting some more of the context that they may have already processed it a while ago and not realize that it's valuable to the people that they're communicating to right now, of some of that really intentional, clear, hey, what our mission is this, our purpose is this, and our values are this. How is shifting to a membership model aligned with that? Because that can help with, you may not know how you're going to do it. You may not know whether or not some of the things that have worked in the past are going to work. You can feel confident that any energy you are contributing to this new direction is still aligned with why you were there in the first place. So I think having that deeper connection to the why is a way through the unknowns and the uncertainty. And sometimes as CEOs, as leaders, we've already been thinking about it for long enough that we're like, hey, this is happening. And we miss those important things. So having grace for the CEO and saying, hey, can you help me understand how is the membership model going to align with our values and mission? Because right now I'm just trying to wrap my head around this big of a change, and having some of this why would really help me, support me in getting clear on how I can contribute to making this successful transition. I'd want to understand that, because if I know for me, and everyone is different, I know for me, I have to have that clarity of purpose to go towards the unknown, the uncertainty. And if I do, I'm like, okay, I can figure it out. But if it's just this looming big change, that's really hard to get excited about.
Yeah. And it's so simple, but it's so profound, because what I felt when you said that was this higher up CEO might say, oh my gosh, absolutely. Here's all the thought that went into this. And I get like reassurance and I can feel more confident as the community manager. Or it creates very generous, curious space for that CEO to acknowledge, we didn't quite reflect on all of that in this transition. Why don't we sit down together and figure out, does this align with our vision, mission, and values? Or is a different decision merited? It's a very generous, curious way to prompt a little bit more of that background information that is going to give you more confidence as a community manager.
Absolutely.
So Marie, you have a depth of knowledge in this space. Is this shift the writer is experiencing? Are you finding this across the board, or what are some of the broader trends in the online education space that you see happening within the sense of community?
Yeah, I think this is a rapidly evolving and changing space. And I think I still have a little bit of like my own personal grief of these really good old days that were, like, I started back in 2015. Having a cohort-based course was novel, and getting the word out about Alt MBA or the marketing seminar or the story skills workshop was a very different challenge than it is right now in trying to get my offer or Akimbo's offer out in front of people, even our own existing community, because there are so many more options available to people, and how people are working and engaging and interacting is still being completely reinvented and recalibrated from COVID, from all of us asking these larger questions of what does work mean to me? Why am I doing what I'm doing? So there are these just bigger existential, I think, changes happening for people. And the bigger question is, how are people going to learn and be in community together? And I think our work as community managers, as leaders, as people who are passionate about this space, is to offer new ideas and new ways of doing it and to test and experiment. So I just want to say that this shift is something we're experiencing at Akimbo. Our cohort-based programs do not work the same way that they worked 3 years ago. And when I bring a group of people together now, it's a totally different thing than when I ran an Alt MBA in 2016. So I think it's important to highlight the larger context of this is just a really exciting, like a little bit explosive space, in that I probably talk to 3 or 4 people each week that are like, oh yeah, I'm thinking about putting a course online, or I'm thinking about starting a community, and we're a company that used to do all in-person trainings and we're trying to figure out digital. This work and this kind of way of being and engaging is permeating much further. It's getting into the ethos. So just acknowledging that and saying, this is amazing. You have deep knowledge and driving engagement in cohort-based models. Like, that's amazing, because this is still a very emergent space. So any depth of knowledge is like awesome. And just to see that as it's changing, it's going to keep changing. I know you see this all the time, Bri, with how communities are running. So I think if we're all going to be in this work, it does require having that mindset of it's changing, it's dynamic, it's creative, and I want to be in that space because I can speak personally. That's not why I don't work for a university. That's why I don't work for a traditional education, because those formats are more set and rigid. I am in this space of experimentation because I want to help create new ways for people to learn and engage. So I think sometimes realigning your own personal purpose too can help in surfing all these waves and these shifts, because they're happening everywhere in the ed tech space.
Absolutely. It's such a good reminder for me. I felt like I took a deep breath when you said that. Just seeing that change as a huge opportunity. Like even 4 years ago, when I started consulting and building communities, I would share that I'm a community strategist, and people would say, "Oh, so social media?" and it took a lot of effort even just to describe what I did, and I don't have to do that anymore. And there's a part of me that is threatened by that and sees like a lot of other, like a lot of new competition, a lot of new people in the space, which tells me that it's growing very rapidly. And the posture that I want to have and need to remind myself of is that growth means way more opportunity than it means opportunities are being taken from me, that there is so much more to be had if we stay curious, if we introduce new ideas, if we experiment and test and stay flexible and stay attuned to what the market is doing, which is rapidly evolving. I will completely agree. What are some of the tests or experiments you mentioned that so you see this broader evolution and trend happening? You're experimenting, you have a deep knowledge in the cohort-based. What are some of the changes that you yourself are making and testing out within the community educational space?
Okay, I'm trying to think about like how to categorize them. So some of them are driven more by my personal needs and interests, and then some are driven by what I'm observing with people and their attention and their energy and what they need. So it's a mix of empathy driven and really trying to use my deep understanding of meeting people where they are with some offers. And then my own needing to not run 200-day ones or these really intense long ones because they take a lot. So I've been experimenting quite a bit with shorter formats and creating experiences that are trying to take analog things that we do in the world and bringing them into digital format, because I'm really curious how to hone my translation skills, if you will. So for example, 2 weeks ago, we ran Akimbo summer camp, and it was a 4-day digital experience, and we brought people together, and it had a start and a finish, and there were cabins and activities. And so I'm playing a lot with how can you bring some of these analog experiences into the digital space in an effort to get new ideas, but to create some longer format things later this year and into next year. But I've been really having fun playing with shorter experiences and doing quite a bit live on Zoom trainings and workshops. And I will say I have heard from our community, they enjoy the experiences. And there is this desire, which I heard consistently all the way from 2015 till now, there is a continued desire to stay connected to people. So I'm also starting to really think about what are ways that operationally are, because I am very mindful of 24/7, it's open 24/7. I don't know of a lot of things besides digital and social media that have that 24/7 open. So I'm starting to think about what are ways to have that we're staying connected while bringing in what works so well with cohort-based, which is, hey, there's a start and there's a finish, but maybe how could it be more dynamic? So I'm starting to really think about how to build some of those based on all of my experience with longer format, a lot of the experiments I've been running lately with shorter things, and this continued feedback that I get of, I want to be connected and I don't want to be alone. I want to be with other people who are trying to do this kind of work and this kind of thing. So that's making me realize something else to say to Crumbling community in Kansas is make sure you're going past the tactics you're using for engagement and what are the things you always hear from your community? What are they asking for? What are they really appreciating about the experience? Because they may say on the surface, oh, I love the weekly prompt. But there's something much deeper going on there, which is I actually like reading other people's posts or whatever it is. So I'm just realizing and sharing what I've been up to is I think that's an important piece of community to stay connected to is what is your community asking you for? And how are you designing and creating the formats and the bases for that? And then pay structure. So you could have a membership-based pay structure, but on top of it, you could be running all cohort-based experiences. But I think these things can layer on top of each other. But I know it's so hard to do when you're in the thick of things. That creative space where you can imagine some of this is like you got to take a beat and give yourself some room to be able to do that.
Just why we say don't do it alone. Community building is hard enough. There's no reason to do it alone. Yeah, that's really good. It also reminded me, you said the magic word around hearing the feedback from your members, that connection piece. And I would say by and large, I don't want to overgeneralize here, but I would say for educational journeys, the cohort-based model tends to pair very nicely for connection-centric communities where there's maybe not a learning journey in mind, but you're creating the container for those connections to happen. And there's always like common goals or values, or there's a common direction, but there's not necessarily this exact same journey. The membership model creates a little bit more space for you to hold that container and for people to have connection as the center rather than this like educational journey. So I resonate a lot with what you shared. And I think one of my key takeaways from this is remaining very open and curious to the third option. For my own brain likes to put things in categories and create the either or scenarios. So I love the mindset shift that you prompted in this to just remember that it's not black and white. It's not as mutually exclusive as we make it out to be. We might need to have some of that clarity for our own sanity and how we're creating a structure. But at the end of the day, there's so much more flexibility. And that's probably going to be what allows you and your company and your community to stand beyond the rest, is when you are willing to embrace those third options and that messy middle.
Yes. And that makes me think of one more question to go to the higher ups with, which is, can we have cohort and membership? And maybe Crumbling community in Kansas, you absolutely love running these cohorts and you want to keep doing that. And could that be a conversation also? Hey, what if I keep running this and I offer support for rolling out the membership model based on, look at all this amazing stuff I've learned from our alumni community. So just, Bri, really reinforcing that yes and conversation, or that yes and mindset, and not having to give something up that's working, that you've put a lot of time into, that you love, if it is still working, and figuring out what it could look like to adapt that versus having to let it go completely.
Wonderful. Well, Marie, I've so enjoyed this conversation. It's amazing to hear just how you think about everything from the high level mindset, the vision, the why behind it, down to some of the tactical experiments that you're running and what in the space. Is there any way that our listeners can follow along your work or support your work?
You can find what I'm up to at akimbo.com and things that we're sharing and launching. And I'm working on some more stuff on my marieschacht.com website. But for now, I'd say keep following along at Akimbo and having a lot of fun there and learning and growing, and have been through a lot of these challenges that our letter writer is speaking about. So you are not alone. It is par for the course.
10 out of 10 recommend. Yes. Speaking as someone who has been through several of your programs, cannot recommend it more highly. So Marie, thank you so much for your time and for what you are bringing into the world in the form of education and community. And thank you for being a guest on the podcast. It was lovely to have you.
Thank you for having me, Bri, and thank you for your work in bringing people together around this conversation and this work.
Thank you so much for sharing some space with me on this episode. Please like and review wherever you find your podcasts. To submit your own community conundrum, fiasco, or other drama, go to the link in the show notes. Aloha and catch you next time.